Once again, a very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As you all know, my name is Soumya Dubey, and I am from the Economic Times ETHRWorld team. We are really excited to meet you today with yet another innovative session. And when I say innovative, I really mean the first immersive masterclass, which is curated by ETHRWorld in association with Indeed on inclusive intelligence, unleashing a diversity and inclusion leadership narrative by none other than Furkan Karayel, multi-award-winning diversity and inclusion speaker and author of the best-selling book, Inclusive Intelligence, How to Be a Role Model for Diversity and Inclusion in the Workplace. Furkan lectures at Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Master's Program at Dunlower Institute of Art, Design and Technology. Her passion is leveraging women in tech leadership, diversity, and empowering female founders globally. This masterclass will spotlight the pattern in some leaders who naturally excelled at inclusive leadership, even though they were unaware of it and unable to define it. It's a pleasure to announce the breakout room leaders, starting with Niloy Bakshi, Head of Talent Acquisition India, Johnson Controls, Nitin Khurana, Global Talent Acquisition Head, Indegene, Nivedita Lalge, Associate Director, Diversity and Inclusion, Subex, Rohan Sylvester, Recruitment Evangelist, Indeed, Srivatsa Nagarajya, Director, Talent Acquisition, Thrive Digital Health, LLP, and Soumya, who's going to be me moderating one of the rooms. So without any further ado, I'm passing the frame to Furkan.
Thank you so much for this warm introduction, Soumya. Hello and welcome, everyone. As I said, I'm super excited today. It's going to be my first talk to India, and I'm super excited to talk to you about my book, about what it includes, inclusive intelligence, and what it is, how it's been practiced in the workplace, and how can we embed diversity and inclusion in our daily agenda. So let me share my screen with you. And you can let me know if you can see it. How is it?
Yes, we can see it, Furkan.
Great, great. So I would like to ask a question to you, first of all. Have you ever changed your job because of your manager? Can I see the hands, or if you can type in the chat box as well? Yeah, I see a lot of hands up. Okay. And let me share why this is important, and let me share my story with you as well. After working for 10 big years as a software engineer in multinational tech companies in Ireland, I made a huge transition in my career. And here is why. The first reason was I'm not able to see women who look like me in the leadership positions of big companies. And this wasn't an issue for an organization or for a society or a country, but it was a global issue. While there were so many talented women out there, I started to question why we don't see them out there. The second biggest reason was diversity, inclusion, belonging. These words were being used a lot as a marketing tool by big organizations, and the action piece was always missing. It was very frustrating to see. The third, but not the least one, was my managers. They basically didn't know how to deal with me, even though I could be nominated to be one of the most easygoing of the team, but again, they didn't know how to deal with me. As a result, I founded my company Diverse In, with the vision to make it the go-to place for diverse and inclusion trainings, education resources, posts, articles, you name it, all on practicality, bringing action steps to diverse inclusion for corporate world. And today I also lecture at IEDT, as Soumya mentioned, on their master's program. And last year, my book was published, and inclusion in the workplace. So what I'll do, I will be talking a little bit about why this came out, what was the trigger that I wanted to write this book? What does it include? What are the insights? And also, we will get you to hands-on what you're going to do, what can you all do all about diversity and inclusion and inclusive intelligence. So let's get started. I would like to share with you my definition of diversity and inclusion, first of all, because the definitions matters. So here it is. Diversity is you because you are unique. Inclusion is accepting you because you matter. And we are all different from one another in terms of gender, age, ethnicity, race, culture, religion, sexual orientation, ability, disability, neurodiversity, and more. We are like our fingerprints. We are all unique, and our differences, visible or invisible, all deserves to be recognized and appreciated. That's why the unique piece of diversity and inclusion is the holistic view of diversity and inclusion is more important rather than going beyond gender or going beyond culture. So research actually shows that why this matters to us, to me, to you, to organizations is that this research shows that well-being and inclusion works hand in hand together. For example, when well-being is increased in a team or an organization, the inclusion is increased as well. When inclusion is increased, the well-being of the organization is increased as well. And these together bring so many great features. For example, reducing stress, feeling satisfied with the work that we do, our feeling of personal achievements, talent attraction, retention, our way that we collaborate together, and our feel of feeling belong, the psychological safety. So these all also results in impacting the bottom line, which is the company revenues. And this is not only one person's well-being or inclusion. By the mirroring effect, we all get impacted by each other's mood, even though if we notice it or not. But one's well-being is impacted in the organization or in the team because we interact, then ours got impacted as well. So that's why it's really important for us, for teams, and for organizations. And let me share my favorite slide of this presentation here is, so this research shows how diverse teams work. And this one particularly talks about diverse teams actually takes longer to come into performing stage. And when they are managed by inclusive leaders, their productivity level is so high. And on the other side, when diverse teams are not managed by inclusive leaders, their productivity level is at the bottom. So imagine the same diverse team. They could be the top performing team, or they could be the least performing team. And the biggest factor here that plays role is the inclusive leader. And do you see the impact of an inclusive leader here? It's huge. So what is an inclusive leader then? So inclusive leaders are the leaders who believes in and demonstrates inclusive behaviors in their communication styles, inside and outside of workplace. I get an opportunity in the last 5 years to work with so many different leaders globally. And they were located in different locations. They do different jobs and they come from different backgrounds. What we have seen in those leaders that some of the leaders were naturally so good at inclusion. And if you even ask them what is inclusive leadership, they wouldn't be able to describe it, but they were living it. They had it on their agenda, they had it on their behaviors, and they were implementing diversity and inclusion and also becoming role models. So it was very interesting to discover this. And very, very luckily, we have seen a pattern in those leaders that makes them inclusive leaders. And this came out of these 6 skills in them. So the first one was self-awareness, no surprise. Then empathy, and also engagement and collaboration, cultural wisdom, accountability, and commitment. I'm going to touch into a little bit of each of the pillars, and then we are going to go into the breakout room for the conversation. So that's what makes it more beautiful, because for each conversation, it's with all different people, and we all learn. Like I learn myself as well from these conversations. So I'm really excited for this. So inclusive intelligence. So how do we define it then? It's internalizing inclusion, opening up consciously to different views, and leading with authenticity. What do we mean by this? It means, in very simple form, normalizing inclusion. So it's going to be part of our life, and consciously being open to different ideas and accepting the fact that there is not only one way of doing things. And on the other side, knowing ourselves as our authentic self, recognizing us as an authentic one, so that our leadership style is not going to be an imitating leadership, but it's going to come from us, from our authentic self. It's the meeting point of emotional intelligence and inclusive leadership. So I would like to start with the self-awareness piece. Soumya mentioned that as well. I'll be honest with you, this was one of the most interesting one that many leaders struggled with. Why? Because self-awareness needs courage. Self-awareness needs vulnerability. Self-awareness means being open to change and accepting the fact that we can do mistakes as well. So when leaders we have seen that inclusive leaders' self-awareness was higher than other leaders, and it was very visible. So what they have done, they were constantly working on themselves, on their communication, on their understanding their authentic values, what does this mean to them, and also this allows them to recognize other people in the team, recognizing their authentic values as well. So it's all about working on themselves and understanding who they are in their core. And it also includes understanding their blind spots, understanding their own biases. The more they know about their blind spot, they take action and stop themselves to prevent their biases taken into action. And it all includes a lot of discovering. It includes using different tools, different mechanisms to get to know themselves in the core better. So it's all about self-awareness that makes the whole difference. And it starts with the mindset shift really in our head. No surprise, empathy is today one of the number one skill in leadership. And I'm really surprised that we don't look for empathy in our leaders as like we are looking for a skill or a technical skill in our CVs, because it's really huge. It helps the leaders to put themselves into the shoes of others and look at the situation or problems from their perspectives. Because if they could do that, they could solve the problems easier. Research also shows that empathy is a learnable skill rather than a trait. So there are ways of practicing empathy as well. And I'm going to share one example for mentorship programs. Introducing mentorship programs, leaders put themselves into the shoes of the other person, maybe from a different background, and as learnings are two ways. While they were learning about another culture, they get an opportunity to give back what they were, career learnings and opportunities that they could share with another person, and everyone's path is different. By practicing empathy with mentorship, really worked for inclusive leaders. And there are so many other ways of doing it as well, but this is one thing I wanted to share and highlight. When it comes to collaboration and engagement, there are two sides of it. The one is your engagement with your leader. The question that I asked, if you ever change your job because of your leader, your manager, and that was many people changed their job because of their manager. The other side is the teams itself feeling that, togetherness, the team engagement within each other. So inclusive leaders, we have seen that they were really on the top of everything. What was going on within the team? What was happening within a team member's life? They were at the top of everything, and they were putting a lot of effort to build that psychologically safe space to feel their team was connected. And they didn't say that like, oh, okay, they are not doing anything, but, they put themselves into that situation that, it is me, that I need to do something about it. I need to change my method maybe, but I need to do it. In today's world, unfortunately, globally, the team engagement rate is only less than 15%. And that is a global rate by Gallup 2017. In the interpretation of that, we can say that we are only using 13, 14, 15% of our workforces, our own resources. So there's so much room to grow. And inclusive leaders have that ability to make that grow happen. In terms of cultural wisdom, this is the first time that was described by myself, cultural wisdom term. So let me explain what it is. So cultural intelligence, maybe you have heard of that. It's the ability to function across different cultures. And on the other side, cultural wisdom is the ability to work effectively across different cultures without stereotyping and microaggressions. So, why is it important? The more we learn about another culture, our brain is very much prone to categorizing, stereotyping, building shortcuts in our brain that it's going to be easier to remember. However, what we have said that we are all unique, our culture, our background, our own preferences, cultural wisdom accepts the fact that we are unique so that we don't put everyone coming from the same culture into the same category. In another term, stereotyping. So stereotyping and microaggressions, I mentioned stereotyping. The most often we hear is women are not good drivers. That is a statement of stereotyping. And I always object to that. I'm a good driver, I'm a woman, but that has nothing to do with me being a woman or not, but I'm a good driver. On the other side, microaggressions are the verbal form of stereotyping. For example, you're a good driver for a woman. So this is a form of microaggression. I can go into that detail in so many different forms, but I'll You can ask any questions you have in your head about cultural wisdom or microaggressions on the chat box. So the next one was accountability. And inclusive leaders actually said that I am responsible for making my team coming to work every single day happily. This is my responsibility. I need to make it. I need to find a way to make it. And I was very inspired to hear these words from them. And they didn't push any work into any department or anything. When I met a Wall Street organization leader years ago, I introduced myself on my diversity and inclusion work. His response to that was, our organization has no problem with diversity and inclusion. Our HR department deals with that. So that is a very large organization in so many different countries. But I was very surprised by his response that we have no problem, they deal with that. On the other side, the inclusive leaders' behaviors were completely different. They hold themselves accountable to make their teams feel included and coming to work happily. And the final one was commitment. And this is the most visible one, interesting enough. When we ask the other leaders in the department to see who is your role model, who is doing well in terms of diversity and inclusion within this department, they always pointed out one or two people. Many of them pointed out these two people. And this shows us how it's visible, the actions, the outspoken on bringing diversity and inclusion, making their teams included, valued, seen, are also visible to everyone in the organization. What they do, they share their stories. They talk about, be outspoken. They actively engage what's happening out there in terms of diversity and inclusion events, or engaging their teams into activities like this. And their commitment was very, very clear.
So Niloy, what are your top 2 actions that you would let us know?
If I talk about top 2 actions, for me, it's I talked about counseling. So first action point is counseling. As a TA lead, as well as we have to set the expectation with all our hiring partners, our leaders, our stakeholders, as well as our own team. And we keep on counseling them that why it is required, what is the importance of it, okay, what is the objective behind D&I hiring, okay, why we should not do any kind of biasness. So these are also a part of our goals, okay, so that is why we have to counsel. There is no other option. And also we have to make sure that everybody follows it religiously, make sure that we build a very good culture where everybody is respected. It's a safe workplace. So these are this covers the first point. Second point is educating. For the D&I aspect, we keep on educating to each of our team members. And it's not only team members, it's because D&I cannot be achieved if the mindset is not there. And we need to have a very, very good mindset so that we know that this is one of our important things to do as an activity, as well as a goal, as a task, and as a organization growth. So we want to make sure that everybody is aware and they get proper education. Why DNI is required. Second is that we have different L&D teams. So in learning and development team also keeps on educating on these aspects, and we want to make sure that it is driven by not only TA team, but by the business teams, by the
organization as a whole,
and for the entire organization. So our management team is very, very focused on DNI, and that is how we are achieving our targets.
Great. So Group 1 submits to us counseling as well as educating for the DNI aspects. The answers are definitely shifting with the massive disruption that we've seen. I'm coming to Group 2 leader, Rohan. So Rohan, what are the top 2 traits from your group?
Thanks, Soumya. Firstly, the pillar that we were focused on was empathy. And it was a really interesting conversation. So I want to start off, we came up with a lot of ideas. There were 5 things that the team said was really important. But one thing that we kept coming back to over and over again was communication. And communication seemed too broad a topic, so I delved deeper with the team. And the thing that it basically came down to is listen to them, right? Listen to your employees, listen to your team, listen to your colleagues. Essentially, what they wanted to convey was you need to communicate and understand what they are going through at all times, because not just from a professional standpoint, from a personal standpoint. In fact, one of the team actually said, we need to have channels to listen. Basically, make it okay to have personal conversations with people, right? I mean, you don't have to jump straight into work with every meeting. You can always start your one-on-ones with a bit of personal conversation to understand what they're actually going through. And this doesn't serve towards, this doesn't make you empathetic, but it helps you be empathetic, because by listening to what they're saying and listening to what they're going through, you have a greater understanding of what they're going through.
Yeah.
And then when the time arises, it's easier to be empathetic, right? It's very easy to say, okay, the person's not doing what they're supposed to doing. But by understanding that there are things happening in their life outside of their control, it becomes okay. The other thing was this was an interesting way of putting it. It's basically be authentic and promote authenticity and honesty. The idea being that, I think Furkan said it, like, empathy is it can be a learned trait, but to learn it, you have to see someone put it into practice. Yeah. And the thing about leaders is you have to be authentic and vulnerable before you can expect your own team to be authentic and vulnerable. I think this was actually in a study I recently read where they said all leaders say they want their employees to be authentic and vulnerable. But when asked, are you authentic and vulnerable? They all said no, because I'm the leader, I can't be. But I think you have to empathy has to start with yourself in some ways, and it has to come top down. We can't just expect everyone to be authentic and vulnerable and you not. Those are the 2 major points that came through. And there were 2 more things: respect boundaries, highlight and promote that empathy is not a weakness, and also ask questions, right? When you come across a situation which you feel there is conflict rising up, I think usually it's because of a misunderstanding, and you should be asking questions. So on that note, I'll stop talking.
That was very comprehensive, Rohan. Thank you so much. I'm going to come to Group 3, and Nitin is here. So Nitin, what are the top 2 behaviors from your group?
I think one of the behaviors that we all anticipated was participation. and our topic was basically how do we really embed engagement within teams. And I think we had some great session in terms of everybody participating. A couple of things came out, like, the ability for the leaders themselves to really understand, and we had Prerna, Kiran, Ujjal, Abhishek, all chiming in for a lot of pieces. How do you attach a cause for the workforce? Then how do you include them in decision-making, brainstorming, and then obviously some amount of change management. But we realized that if you really want your workforce to be engaged, like how Nilo was saying, we need to communicate and hyper communicate and be very transparent with them, right? You need to ideate, crowdsource of thoughts with them, and generally in corporate, it's a top-down approach or a very unified, one segmented way of moving. How do you encourage volunteering from people? If you really want people to be engaged, People say nobody's saying anything because you shut them out before they even open it, right? How do you identify their strengths and their levels of interest? How do you cross-pollinate by personally connecting with them? And important, how do you recognize profoundly and loudly? And one of the things that I continue to tell within the teams is you speak less and let your team speak more. Otherwise, you really don't get engagement happening there. And whether it is DNI or anything, I think it has to be ingrained into our DNA. It is not something that needs to be done, have to be done, part of our goals and KRAs or organization mandate, because then we're doing it just because we've been told. It has to be the very sense and the beauty of it, and a very raw analogy. Like we tell our children or everybody, you need to brush at night. It's good to have, but you realize the repercussions much later because there are after effects. So I think it's about your belief. DNI is more about a belief and a change in thought process, culture within any organization and within the person itself. So I think these were our couple of takeaways. If I were to say the top two ones could be ideate and crowdsource together, and then maybe recognize profoundly and loudly within people to keep them really engaged and clued on.
Absolutely. I think I love the way this entire session is moving, these directions, these perspectives were definitely not, we had imagined. So that's always a great, and that's the beauty of coming together and working towards it. I'm going to come to the fourth group leader, Nivedita. What are your group's, inputs or the top two behaviors?
I think I'd like to start by saying that I just love what I hear from Nitin and Rohan and Niloy. And what I realized is, all of us are saying the same thing in different words, right? It's but the same thing. And if you will see the thread which is connecting, Soumya, is underlying connection is people. It is people at the end of it. So how you connect with people, right? Not taking too much time. I think the topic that was given to our group was basically cultural wisdom. What are those top two things that, let's say, leaders can do from becoming more culturally wisdom thing. So I think what we've come up with is that if you have to become culturally wisdom, demonstrate that ability, you must know people. If you don't know your people, if you don't know the different backgrounds that they come from, the different cultural, richness that they bring in, you will not be able to connect with them, right? So for that to happen, one, you need to know your people just beyond employee number and some tagging given to each of us. I think you will need to do a little bit more, and for that to happen, and for that to manifest into larger things at an organization level, I think you need to ensure that you build the cultural competency, right? So I think that is very, very important as far as building that cultural wisdom is concerned. Secondly, I think, like Nitin was saying, it is about the vulnerability that leaders can show. Coming out and showing that, hey, just because I'm the leader, I don't have my bad days, or I'm not vulnerable at all. So I think it is important for leaders to actually bear it out all. That's when you really create a psychologically safe space for people to really come out their authentic self. So by showing that emotional side of you, by connecting with people, by storytelling, that's how I think people can really connect with leaders. Three, I think I'll just take one more second, Soumya. I think very, very interesting topic. Leaders can also show visible signals, when they are in a group to foster or to show that this is important or someone is important, or basically trying to bust the myths of, let's say, other groups. So I think these were some thoughts that came out from my group. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nivedita. Definitely, you guys had a great discussion. Very quickly moving to Srivatsa. I know we are running out of time. So yes, Srivatsa, what are the top two behaviors that you would share with us?
So basically, it's no different from the earlier four. I would say, I would just keep it very short as we're running out of time. I would say one is awareness, and the second one is make it the culture of the organization. I can say probably go on because the discussion what we had between the four of us was really good. I would say culture because this is something which has to be led. And in very simple terms, if you have to define culture of an organization, culture of an organization is something which is rewarded in the organization. It may be in any term. So if you make it the culture of the organization, yes, then say probably people will breathe it. And it comes right from the top, right? Person who's leading. And when you see your peers, your boss doing that, basically you will try and fall in line. So make it the culture, as Nivedita told. And the second one is awareness, because what people hear and see is what they will do.
Yeah.
So that training part, awareness, you use different terminologies, but awareness is the word I would say. The more you talk about it, people will fall in line, I would say. I would keep it short. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Srinatha. We had an amazing discussion, very, very diverse set of brands were with me in this group. But yes, just taking the cognizance of time, the top 2 actions or behaviors that we would want to share is, one, that group really believe that it is high time that we give an equal opportunity to everyone. And that is something which will definitely, stand out and make a difference for tomorrow. Secondly, I did get a lot of comments around how constructive feedback really contributes to your commitment. This feedback, the journey from a critical feedback to a constructive feedback, is something that you should definitely take over. So these are the 2 cents from my group. I'm going to give the frame to Furkan. Furkan, we've shared all the inputs. Over to you.
I have taken all the notes, and thank you so much for this very, very interactive, very lovely discussion. I'm really honored, and I learned a lot from this conversation, obviously. And I would like to end my talk by saying that a lovely quote from Mino Shafiq, and it says, "Yesterday, jobs were about muscles. Now they're about the brains, but in the future, they will be about the heart." So that's where the importance of diversity and inclusion, that's where the bottom line, people, recognizing people comes into the picture. And thank you for joining us here today.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Furkan. I think this was terrific. Thank you so much for making this session interactive and immersive. And yes, for our audience today, you all have been wonderful. Thank you once again for joining us. And yes, before I let you all go, I'm going to take a moment to thank our wonderful team of Economic Times, ETHRWorld, and Indeed that supported us throughout, without whom this session wasn't possible.